With the scouting combine officially in the books and the NFL free agency period close to arriving, it's important to look back and see which prospects established themselves further and helped their draft stock during their week in Indianapolis, especially as it relates to the interests of the Denver Broncos. Of course, the tape and intelligence matters far more than the measurables in the underwear Olympics, but the metrics do matter. Marrying the metrics to the tape and character reports is where a team reaches nirvana of draft evaluation. After completing the top 10 offensive prospects who helped their draft stock, it's now time to look at the defensive players. All bets are off on what will happen in the Broncos' 2019 offseason. Don't miss out on any news and analysis. Take a second to sign up for our free Broncos newsletter, delivered 3 times daily. Mile High Huddle, 247 Sports covered the combine on site for the 3rd straight year, getting an up-close look at the 2019 draft class. This article is part 2 of the culmination of what we learned at the combine, a look back at who helped themselves the most. Here are the defensive prospects whose combine performance perhaps put them higher on Denver's radar. The defensive line talent in this draft class is nothing short of awesome. While the likes of Quinnen Williams and Ed Oliver have established themselves as early round 1 level talents, both likely to go top 10 in the NFL draft, the next tier of players is yet to be sorted out. Jeffrey Simmons would have been in the discussion as a top 10 player as well, but an ACL injury nipped that in the bud. While many people have expected Christian Wilkins to be the next defensive lineman after the big two, Jerry Tillery showed in Indianapolis that he deserves to be a part of the discussion as well. After a solid career at Notre Dame, the interior pass rusher showed that his flashes and tape were warranted based on his size and athleticism. With huge size at 6'6" 2,295 of a pound and arm length of 34 1/4 inch, Tillery looks like an ideal 3 to 4 defensive end in the NFL. His testing was great as well, with a 4.93 40-yard dash, 87th percentile, 32-inch vertical, 80th percentile, 115-inch broad, 95th percentile, 7.45 second 3-cone, 73rd percentile, and 4.33 20-yard shuttle, 93rd percentile. Tillery was inconsistent at Notre Dame, but had flashes of dominance as an interior pass rusher similar to a player such as Kansas City Chiefs' Chris Jones. His game against Stanford was one of the best bits of tape any interior defensive lineman put together this season. He will need to work on keeping his leverage with his height and become more nuanced with his pass rushing technique, but the athletic upside for Tillery is massive. Given that Derek Wolfe, Shelby Harris, and Adam Gutsis are set to hit free agency next season, Tillery is very much in play if the Broncos end up trading down from 10 overall and look at a high-upside defensive lineman round 1. A super explosive raw long upside interior pass rusher. Bill Collar will be intrigued. After a solid career at Arizona State University, Wren declared for the draft a year early. While Wren never really put up incredible stats as a Sun Devil, his flashes of burst and dominance were on display weekly. Even if the stats didn't rack up, his impact and disruption along an opposing team's offensive line was felt as Wren lined up from 3 tech down to 1 tech as a surprisingly twitched-up interior pass rusher with pop. However, given the inconsistencies and lack of production, Wren needed to show the athleticism at the combine. First, the size is great, measuring in at 6'4" 7/8", 318 pounds, and a 33 1/8 inch arm length, a big long interior defensive lineman. At that weight, it was pretty eye-opening too to see Wren test. With a 5.01 second 40, 71st percentile, 32-inch vertical, 80th percentile, 118-inch broad, 98th percentile, 7.65-inch 3-cone, 53rd percentile, 4.53 second 20-yard shuttle, 74th percentile. Wren's athletic testing to size ratio is very intriguing. Wren will need to work on his technique at the next level, as his hand technique is extremely raw and unpolished. However, his versatility across the defensive front, ranging from playing some nose tackle, but even better as a one-gap penetrating 3-4 or 5 technique for the Broncos scheme. Brent's first step and explosion is exactly what Denver wants, but he has a long ways to go till he puts it all together. What a freak. After a solid showing in the Senior Bowl in Mobile, where Montez Sweat drew oohs and ahs at his weigh-ins, the edge rusher from Mississippi State was once again a massive winner at the NFL Combine for his size and athleticism. While not a totally impactful pass rusher in college, showing some stiffness and some questionable bend in ankle flexion, the size, length, and burst were always apparent on tape from Sweat. Perhaps it was his counterpart Jeffrey Simmons on the interior taking away attention from the edge rusher, but Sweat made himself some money in Indianapolis. With a weigh-in at 6'5" -3/4", 260 pounds, and a massive arm length of 35 3/4 of an inch, 98th percentile, Sweat probably deserved the wide eyes here and when he was profiled for his size. However, there are a lot of big guys in the league. The athletic testing made him stand out though, with a 40-yard dash of 4.41 seconds, 99th percentile and faster than both cornerbacks Byron Murphy and DeAndre Baker. 36-inch vertical, 81st percentile, 125-inch broad, 92nd percentile, 7.00 second 3-cone, 83rd percentile, and 4.29 second 20-yard shuttle, 77th percentile. Sweat put on a display that will be talked about for years to come. However, with such a fantastic athletic display, it begs the question why he wasn't even better in college. Perhaps it is the lack of flexibility or limited lateral mobility in his game, as the overall stiffness in his hips and base can be a limitation of any great edge rusher. Still, Sweat helped himself a lot in the pre-draft process and will go top 20 at the end of the day. Denver doesn't need a first-round edge, but his combine was too good not to include at the end of the day. The Broncos should not use a first-round pick on the edge rusher given the resources they have piled in at the position with Von Miller and Bradley Chubb. There is a discussion to be had if a player like Nick Bosa, Josh Allen, or even Brian Burns falls to them at 10 and is by far the best player available, but even still, the odds of edge round 1 are practically nil. With that said, the Broncos do need edge rusher. As good as Miller and Chubb are, a rotation of talented edge players is extremely important. Perhaps the Broncos will sign a depth rusher in free agency, perhaps Jeff Holland steps up. Even so, the common phrase rings true, one can never have enough pass rushers. One who stood out in Indianapolis both in the drills and the testing was Texas Christian's Ben Banogu. The smaller pass rusher had a solid career in the Big 12 getting after the passer, but has been somewhat under the radar in a stacked defensive edge class. Banogu will be lower on some teams' boards because he is not big. Measured at 6'3" -1/2", 250 pounds and a 33 1/2 inch arm length, Banogu is not really great fit as a base 4-3 defensive end. However, for a team looking to replace Shane Ray's speed rush ability off the bench, Banogu is a great fit. Banogu made himself money in the testing at Indianapolis. With a 4.60 second 90th percentile, incredible lower body explosion with a 40-inch vertical 97th percentile, and a 134-inch broad 99th percentile, and great agility with a 7.02 second 3-cone 80th percentile, and 4.27 second 20-yard shuttle 80th percentile, Banogu could end up a pass rush steal in the draft. Banogu, much like Sweat, doesn't show hardly any bend of flexibility on tape though. Unless he can improve here, he will be limited from being an elite edge rusher at his size. Even still, the athletic traits warrant a selection. If he is still on the board round 4 or 5 for the Broncos, he very well may be the pick as Denver does need more help at edge with talented depth. It is always amazing when a player with practically zero buzz or hype coming into the NFL Combine turns heads with athletic testing, sending the media back to the tape to see if the talent matches the player. This year it can be argued that the player that fits that mold the best is Minnesota linebacker Blake Cashman. The walk-on has had to claw his way for every opportunity to reach this point of his career. Playing for a less than prestigious program like Minnesota, along with the lack of hype coming into the offseason, can make a guy appear to come out of nowhere. However, with his athletic testing, perhaps the hype is now warranted. With a 4.5 second 40, 94th percentile, 37-1/2 inch vertical, 85th percentile, 124-inch broad, 89th percentile, 6.95 second 3-cone, 71st percentile, and a 4.12 second 20-yard shuttle, 84th percentile, Cashman turned heads and opened eyes in Indianapolis. He also looked quite smooth in the field drills. Cashman is not large by any means, but his height of 6'1" and weight of 237 pounds is fine in today's NFL. However, the metric that really will hang some teams up is his length. With a wingspan of 73 to 5/8 of an inch, 2nd percentile, and arm length of 30 to 1/8 of an inch, 1st percentile. Cashman's length, or lack thereof, is a concern. This is seen on tape as well as sometimes he really struggles to fight through blocks and even more so, struggles to finish tackles. He is slipper against blockers often and can maintain his balance, but that lack of length will always be there. Medicals will also be key, as Cashman has had some injuries during his college career. While some may be overcorrecting based on the combine, Cashman is a borderline top 100 player on tape with his testing. If Denver misses out on linebacker early, Cashman could be an option for Fangio and a linebacker unit that is desperate for more athleticism at the position. Right in line with saying the linebacker position is getting smaller and faster, this year's linebacking group put up some incredible athletic specimens on display at the NFL Combine. Perhaps none showed out as well, showing the traits were there beyond the tape, and Louisiana State's Devin White. White is a current favorite to go in the top 10 of the draft and an Energizer bunny on the field in terms of how much energy and joy he displays while playing the game of football. Again, reiterating how the position is getting smaller, White came in at only 6'0", 237 pounds with 32-1/8 inch arm length. However, the athletic testing is where White shined. Running a 4.42 second 40-yard dash, 99th percentile, and again faster than Byron Murphy or DeAndre Baker, and jumping a 39-1/2 inch vertical, 93rd percentile, and 118-inch broad, 62nd percentile, with solid agility, having a 7.07 second 3-cone, 58th percentile, and a 4.17 second 20-yard shuttle, 80th percentile. White did more than enough to show out as a top-level linebacker. The issue for the Broncos is that perhaps he did too well. Given the buzz that the Buccaneers absolutely adore White, perhaps he won't even make it out of the top 5 on the draft. White isn't perfect by any means, as his instincts are still raw and his processing is behind other top of round 1 linebackers of the past. Still, his coverage ability, blitzing prowess up the gap, and overall play makes him one of the most intriguing players in the draft. If he falls to 10 and Vic Fangio gets his hands on White, watch out. Devin White is most people's linebacker 1 in the 2019 NFL Draft. However, there is a debate to be had if that is the case. While possessing a slighter frame and not being as boisterous on the field, and also playing outside the SEC in that realm of bias, Michigan linebacker Devin Bush looked at Devin White and said, "Anything you can do, I can do better." The slightly smaller linebacker, at 5'11", 234 pounds and 32-inch arms, put on another freak show at the NFL Combine at the linebacker position. Running 0.01 seconds slower in the 40 than White at 4.43 40, 97th percentile, and a worse 20-yard shuttle at 4.23 seconds, 66th percentile. Bush outperformed White elsewhere with a 40-1/2 inch vertical, 97th percentile, 124-inch broad, 89th percentile, and 6.93 second 3-cone, 73rd percentile. Bush does possess a slighter frame than White, leaning one to assume that White could carry more weight later in the NFL, but Bush is not far behind. Perhaps no. 10 overall is too early. Consider Bush. He isn't quite as fluid in space and coverage as White is currently, and isn't hit with the same intensity as the LSU linebacker. However, where Bush wins over White is his processing speed and instincts, perhaps the two most important areas of playing the linebacker position. White will be considered the better linebacker by many coming into the draft, but looking back 10 years from now it would be unsurprising if Bush ends up the better player. If the Broncos trade back to the middle or early 20s of the first round, Bush is a player they absolutely must target. While overall most of the upper, defensive backs at the Combine left wanting in the field drills or the athletic testing in Indianapolis, there was one defensive back that rose up and increased their draft stock. Byron Murphy did add weight but ran and tested slow, but then looked good in the drills. DeAndre Baker measured in average and ran below average and was mediocre in the drills. Greedy Williams ran a good 40, but left wanting as a long corner with average length and looked totally out of whack in drills before a cramp. Furthermore, most of the top safeties didn't even test. Virginia's Juan Thornhill didn't shy away from testing though, and did fantastic at the Combine overall. Measuring in at 6'0", 205 pounds, and 31-1/8 inch arm length, Thornhill has okay size for the safety or cornerback position. However, when it came to testing, Thornhill really showed out with a 4.42-second 40-yard dash, 92nd percentile, 44-inch vertical, 99th percentile, and a 141-inch broad jump, 99th percentile. Thornhill did not partake in the agilities, which will raise some flags about his change of direction ability, but the speed with the lower body explosion indicates an elite-level athlete. That said, the agilities still leave questions. Imagine how good DK Metcalf would be if he didn't do the 3-cone or 20-yard shuttle. Thornhill likely goes the back end of round 1, but the thing that is interesting about Thornhill is his upside as not only a safety, but perhaps a cornerback. Being used some as a boundary corner at Virginia, Thornhill was somewhat erratic. However, the ball production, size, and athletic production suggest that perhaps there is something there. Like Byron Jones from Dallas, Thornhill will start his career at safety most likely, but I would be most intrigued to see what he can do at the cornerback position. Before free agency, Denver has a need at both positions, so if Thornhill does fall to round 2, Denver would be wise to jump on the upside defensive back. While the NFL continues to get smaller and faster, finding cornerbacks who can play the boundary position with adequate speed and agilities is becoming an increasingly rare and demanded skill set. Typically corners in the NFL are either small and twitched up and athletic, or long with okay straight-line speed but possess stiffness in their hips, leading to change of direction questions. That's why when players that have both show out, teams take notice. Perhaps no player showed out as well in testing at cornerback this year than Houston's Isaiah Johnson. After an up-and-down stint at the Senior Bowl where Johnson showed off his size and length but also showed some technical issues and stiffness, Johnson needed a good combine to keep his stock at corner rather than a transition to safety. Johnson did that. With a 4.4-second 40-yard dash, 84th percentile, 36-1/2 inch vertical, 60th percentile, 133-inch broad, 96th percentile, and surprisingly good agilities with a 6.81-second 3-cone, 68th percentile, and a 4.06-second 20-yard shuttle, 74th percentile, Johnson did well for himself testing-wise. These numbers are even more impressive considering the size Johnson has at 6'2", 208 pounds, and 33-inch arm length, all 93rd percentile or up. Denver, transitioning to a more zone-heavy scheme, really needs some lengthy corners that can cover more area with their arms. Given the length and size that Johnson possesses, he may be in play round 3 of 4 for Denver. If he doesn't cut it at corner, Johnson also has upside at safety. No corner has had as meteoric of a rise this season than Michigan State's Justin Lane. After transitioning from wide receiver, Lane has steadily grown in his ability as a cornerback. His technique from his ability to press, stay squared and low in his back pedal, and know how to react to certain routes and concepts is still raw, but the upside with the length and ball skills on tape make him extremely intriguing for the NFL. Measured at 6'1" 192 pounds with 33-inch arm length, Lane offers great upside as a boundary corner with his size. He is tenacious with his press, sometimes to a fault, and that length shows up throughout his tape from press to playing the ball to disrupting the receiver. Lane also showed out well athletically, running a 4.5-second 49th percentile and fine for his height and length, 37-1/2-inch vertical, 70th percentile, 134-inch broad, 97th percentile, 6.9-second 3-cone, 55th percentile, and 4.09-second 20-yard shuttle, 67th percentile. All these numbers on their own are solid when adjusting for his size and length. However, where Lane really showed out was in his field drills, showing fluidity and ball skills and transition ability that was not always on the raw corners tape in college. Lane's rapid improvement at the position in his technique is a huge indicator that the best is yet to come for the former receiver. Furthermore, with ball skills being at a premium in the league, Lane will have plenty of suitors. If Lane had returned to school and continued to improve, he would have been in the conversation as a first-round pick in the next draft. Alas, he declared and will be a day 2 selection. If the Broncos are looking for a boundary corner with upside, length, and ball skills, selecting Lane round 2 would be a player they have to consider. Kingsley Kiki IDL Texas A. John Kaminsky IDL Charleston, Bobby O'Carrick ALB Stanford, Ty Summers Texas Christian, Jermaine Pratt LB North Carolina State, Drew Tranquill LB Notre Dame, Ken Webster CB Ole Miss, Jamel Dean CB Auburn, Amani Oruoria CB Penn State, David Long CB Michigan, Amani Hooker S Iowa, Chauncey Gardner Johnson CB S Florida.